Hi, this is PatZi with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper Live, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. And boy, oh boy, do I have a wonderful story to tell you because my guest is Niamh McAnally, and she was here not too long ago because we talked about a wonderful book called Flares Up. And now Niamh is back with us, and she's got her memoir, Following Sunshine. It is fantastic. Hi, Niamh.
Hi, Patsy. Great to see you again.
Oh, it's wonderful to see you. Just fantastic. It's so wonderful when sometimes I get an author on and then I know I'm not going to see that author again for a year, sometimes 2 years. It depends. So I'm so happy that you're here back so soon because this new book, of course, it was already done and you had been working on it. And this is your memoir and it's called Following Sunshine. And that's certainly what you have done. So it's pretty exciting. I think memoirs are, you have to live so much of it over again. And in your case, so much of it is great. And before we start, I want to show, first of all, I'll show a lovely quote. And what could be better than to have a wonderful quote from Liam Neeson, who everybody loves? I watch his movies. He is one of the few actors that I can watch his movies over and over. And he has written a truly brave, enriching memoir that will take you on a global adventure. And he's right. And we're going to start a little backwards because not at the start of your journey. Let's start at what is really inspiring for everybody. And for both men and women, because love and joy can come at any time in your life. You just have to be prepared to accept it, reach out for it, and here you are, a bride. Wow, did you expect that at one point in your life? Did you know this was going to happen? And look at what a beautiful bride and a gorgeous husband you got.
Yes, I certainly wasn't expecting that, to be perfectly honest. I always hoped that there was somebody there out in the world for me. And when I first met Gary, it was when he needed somebody to help him crew his sailboat from Florida to the Bahamas. And that was only supposed to last a month. And I certainly didn't expect that 4.5 years later, there we would be getting married.
Oh, wow. And I didn't put his name up there, but I'm going to do that. And okay, here you are. I put Gary's name up here because I think he deserves a big round of applause and a wonderful, what a smile. I can see why you fell for this guy. He's got $1 million smile.
He has $1 million smile and he's got a radio voice to go with it, let me tell you.
I
He
know he
was
does.
yeah, he's a very great human being, I have to tell you. I'm so blessed, so lucky. Who knew?
This is what is exciting about life. If you go out there and you get out there, you never know what's going to happen. And with Gary, explain again a little bit about this. You were just going to go with him for how long? A little trip?
Yes, I had volunteered to crew for him for 1 month to bring the boat from Florida to the Bahamas, and that was all it was supposed to be, and I was getting ready to go to a family reunion in Ireland, and I stayed on the boat another couple of weeks, and then it turned into 4 months total, and somewhere in that 4 months, we decided that there was definitely a connection between us because when you're on a sailboat, you've got no internet, cell service, and you just end up having to talk to each other, and we found out we had a very similar outlook on life and we had some very deep profound conversations. And but at the end of that 4 months we brought the boat back to Florida, and then we said goodbye because Gary said, look, I'm not ready for a big commitment or another relationship. And he says, I'm going back to California to see my family, and then I was heading to Ireland, but I had a couple of weeks to spare, so he said, oh sure, you can stay on the boat in the marina. During that time I was writing, and I was actually writing Following Sunshine at that point. And then he calls me up and he says, oh, I'm coming back early to take the boat. Do you want to sail up the east coast of America with me up to New Jersey? And I said, sure. What's in New Jersey? And he goes, Newark, and a non-stop flight to Dublin. And I had previously invited him to come, but he was reticent and he said, that speaks a lot of volume in terms of I'd be meeting all your family. What would that say about our status and everything like that? But he came and we had a wonderful time. And that picture
Wow.
there is one of our weddings. We ended up with 3 weddings.
That's funny because I had 3 weddings also.
Did
We had
you?
3 weddings because we had family in different countries, and when we
Hmm.
first got married, we had no family, but we got married right away because I fell in love with my husband, the minute I saw him.
Oh, that's amazing.
So
That's fantastic.
we didn't wait for family or traveling, and we just got married. And then, of
Nice.
course, we later on had 2 wonderful weddings. But here you are, and so tell us about this wedding. You look so Irish here. You look so beautiful.
Do I really?
I love
Um,
that dress.
oh my goodness, that dress was made for me in Antigua, and the jacket was hand painted by it's Nori Phillips down in Antigua. She does a lot of gowns for ship passengers on the cruise ships that come in, and her granddaughter hand painted the tie that Gary's wearing to match my little bolero that they made, and it was absolutely stunning. This one here is in America that we took that photograph. The first one was in Ireland. And then, like you, actually, we had our own legal ceremony, wedding, official marriage, if you like, in Antigua about a year before that because we were planning it the same year, all of the weddings. But then COVID, of course, came in and that stopped us from traveling. So we were stuck. So we just had that original legal wedding. But we did the same as you. That's interesting.
But I think it's fun. It
Yeah.
gives a lot of reasons to get anniversary presents. My husband was giving me anniversary presents 3 times a year. I didn't have to worry about so many women. They're waiting. Will my husband remember the anniversary? When you have 3 of them, the guy is. I got to remember this thing.
He's going to remember at least one of them, you hope, right?
Yeah.
The-
So
the- there we are. That's the one in Antigua. Yeah, that's
uh,
the one on the beach and the Justice of the Peace. Now, the funny thing about that wedding, which was the original, is that Gary we'd both been back ashore in America, like I think it was a couple of months prior to that, and he had bought the engagement ring and the wedding ring. That I didn't know because he still hadn't proposed at that point. He didn't propose until the Thanksgiving before on the deck in Bequia, one of the little islands down in the Caribbean. And of course, I had no ring for him. And we had friends, two couples from who were also sailors down with us. And one of them turned around to me and said, "Look, I got you covered." And he handed me his keys. And he took the keys off, and it was the little ring that you put your keys on. And that's why, because Gary wasn't. And so the Justice of Peace there turns around and she says, "And now it's time for you to put the ring on Gary's finger." And I was like, "What?" And so when I put that on his finger, his little key ring, Gary was laughing so hard. Oh my God, it was hilarious.
this is so nice. This is so nice. And is this still?
That's still Antigua. Yeah, that was
Isn't
I,
that
I think that was just afterwards. We were like, "Oh my goodness, we did it."
you did it? You did it! My
Yeah,
goodness,
yeah.
oh, that's so exciting! Wow, wow. This is. I think it's so inspiring. People sometimes go through life and they say it hasn't come right yet. It hasn't come, but it's never too late. You never know. And
Never too late.
and
Look
I
at that.
wanted this one. I love this photo. This is just pure joy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the final wedding and it was oh my God, it's a journey. And look at us. We weren't exactly 20 years of age now, were we? So it just proves to me and everybody it's never too late. You just don't know what's coming around the corner. And if you're open and receptive, look what can happen.
Exactly, because my father's second uh, wedding after my mother passed away was
Mm.
way into his 70s, and he had a wonderful, I think, 12, 14 years. And this is what can happen. It's so exciting sometimes, and you just have to be open for it. And the wonderful thing about being a writer, and now you can put this all down and tell the story of it and inspire other people, because it is important that we inspire people and give people hope and following the sunshine, because that's a very important thing for me. I believe that's
Hmm.
what people should do, get out there and live and find the joy. And so we'll talk a little bit about your book and some of the stories, and then I have more photos. So each of the photos you can go through and tell us. But first, tell us a little bit. You mentioned, of course, you mentioned your father and your background. Talk a little bit about them, about your background. And
Sure. So the book has a subtitle, which is a voyage around the mind, around the world, around the heart. The first part is about growing up in Ireland with my parents, who were both actors. And the concept there was that they're both freelance actors. So from a very early age, I got used to variety. We never knew where they were going to be working next, for how long. And so it really has been part of my DNA now because I've learned how to reinvent myself when there's a lot of life changes, and we all experience changes in life. And it's that question of looking, where am I at? What is it I want to do? What baby steps do I need to take in order to get to the next step that will yield that for me? And so that's what the whole first part of the book is about that time growing up in Ireland.
And of course, you come from a very interesting family background. I wanted to add your subtitle. So tell us, first of all, how you got the idea for the subtitle and read it to us.
Around the mind, around the world, around the heart. And those three sections represent the three parts in the book. The first one, around the mind, is about my childhood, my backstory, growing up in Ireland. I had two actor parents, and they both were freelance actors. So we never really knew from one week to the next where they were going to be working, how long they were going to be working in a particular show or maybe a TV show. And what that gave me was this ability to reinvent myself all the time. Anytime I come to a crossroads in life, one thing it guarantees is we always going to experience change, and it's how we react to that change. So I was very lucky that all of these major changes in my life, I've had that kind of skill set to be able to look at the situation, figure out where I'm at, what is it I want to do, and what kind of steps do I need to take in order to get to that level.
Tell us about your father first, and then we'll talk about your mother.
Sure. So my dad is Ray McAnally. And there's me and my dad. We were working on the movie called The Mission with Robert De Niro and Jeremy Irons and Liam Neeson down in South America. And that was 1985. That picture was taken, and the show came out the movie came out the year after in 1986. And he was about, what was that, 86? Yeah, it was about 4 or 5 years before he died. And he was really getting into his stride in movies. He'd been in theater a long time, he'd done an awful lot of television, and he was suddenly starting to make movies. And it was like we used to joke about the big money was just around the corner, but then he passed when he was 63, so he was quite young when he died. So I got to spend 4 months with him down in South America. I was working as the stunt assistant on the movie. And the only reason that came about was I was between jobs, between theater jobs at the time, and he had just been cast in the movie, and he said, I'm going down to South America. Do you want to come and help me learn my lines and be my assistant? And I said, sure, that sounds great. And of course, when I got there, then the producers realized I had a skill set in canoeing, like the dugout canoes that are in it, and a bit of rock climbing and just adventure sports. And that's how I got a job on the stunt team as the assistant to Vic Armstrong.
Oh, that's wonderful to have that very precious time with him.
Mm.
Wow.
Oh, it's very rare. You have your parents you're a child, and to get that time for us to both be adults together, adults rather in America, you always get that kind of quality of time with one of your parents. So it was fantastic.
That is. It's wonderful to be able to
Mhm.
work with them and for them to be proud of you because I'm sure he was so proud of you.
Oh, he was like beyond proud of me. He was like exaggerating because he would say, "Oh, I saw Niamh teaching the local Indian tribe how to paddle a canoe." No, that wasn't the case. I was actually pulling some of the canoes into the shot like before they would go into action. But I did get that opportunity to work with Liam Neeson upriver one afternoon and to show him some of the basic strokes that I had learned for canoeing. I'd actually learned it in Canada with the Canadian canoeing style. But
Well,
yeah, no, my dad would exaggerate and say, I taught everybody how to canoe. I didn't.
that's what daddies do. Daddies do
Yes.
that. And that's the joy. That's the joy about having a wonderful dad. I had a wonderful dad. Everything I did was he was so proud of me for anything I did. It was fantastic. Now, here's a gorgeous photo. I love this photo of you and your
This
mom.
this is me and my mom. Her actress name is Ronnie Masterson, and she was still working in various theater, not so much theater, more TV stuff that before she died. And this was I was on a visit home. I was living abroad at the time, but I was on a visit home for I believe Christmas, which is why we're all bundled up. And I had such lovely time with her. And there was a period of time when I was between jobs. I went back to live with her when I was, what age would I have been? It would have been late 40s, I think. And again, I had that opportunity to live with her as an adult rather than as a child. And this was my mom. So I got to know her a little bit more as a human being. It was a wonderful time. But again, she passed in 2014. So it's, oh my goodness, it's been 10 years now. It's hard to believe. Yeah.
What a beautiful face. You can see you look like her, and both beautiful actresses. So it's wonderful again that you got to work with her.
Yes, it was fantastic.
Now, thinking of Liam Neeson, he
Mm.
also gave you another great quote, and I thought this one is really nice. And notice that I put it there in film strip because he talks about being a movie actor. He thinks cinematically. So when he was reading this book, he saw the potential, as I did, because I worked on some scripts and I worked on a nonfiction book and to turn it into a film. And it was better than the one that I did with the fiction book, and it was a thriller, but there wasn't really very much that you could use from the book. To have Liam Neeson say this, Niamh's beautifully written memoir unfolds with warmth, courage, and a touch of cinematic magic, and leaves you uplifted by the impact one person can have. Now, isn't that nice?
That's lovely. Absolutely lovely. Yes.
You are having a real run with movie actors giving you nice blurbs.
Yes, because Jeremy Irons wrote the foreword for my previous book, Flares Up. And that was wonderful. He also narrated it, that his forward on the audiobook as well. So very blessed. And again, I had that wonderful opportunity to meet them and work on set during the filming of The Mission way back in the 80s. When I reached out and I said, look, this is what I've been doing in the meantime, and now I'm a full-time writer. Would you like to have a read? And would you like to offer a quote or a blurb for the book? So they're very kind. One of the things my dad taught me early on, he said, the bigger the star, the more gracious they are. And that is so true. Jeremy
Absolutely.
and Liam have really been so sweet. There's a poem called The Ascent where it's like, if I can lift you up today, you will reach back and grab the hand of 1,000 more. And I feel that about them. Do you know what I mean? They have their careers, they're A-listers, and yet they still have the time to turn around and help somebody else who are there on their journey. So very grateful to them.
It's true. I wrote a film for Debbie Reynolds.
Oh, did you?
You can't get higher than Debbie Reynolds.
No, that's
Absolutely.
amazing.
It went into turnaround because of the stock market crash in 2008. Financing for film dried up all over the world. It wasn't just my film, it was everybody's film. It took quite a few years to recover. By the time we recovered, she was then too old to get insurance. She was such a kind person, such a great person. Born on April Fool's Day. She was always funny and nice, and she called my radio program a week before she passed away.
Oh my.
To wish my listeners, that it was at the end of December, and she wanted to wish everybody happy holidays and happy New Year. And I think it was perhaps the last thing that she had recorded when she called the studio, and it was really exciting. She didn't have to do that. We hadn't done the film. When she called the radio studio, I had tears in my eyes, and I think everybody in the control room did too, because but that's what when you say that, the bigger they are, the kinder they are. And it's always, and I know it in Hollywood, the extras were ruder. And,
yes, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, absolutely. Once they become A-listers, they've got nothing to prove. But yeah, that was a lovely story about her.
Yeah. Tell me, when Irish people are around each other, do you have more of a brogue than you do in everyday life? I love Irishmen. Oh, Irishmen, I can listen to them all day long.
All day.
It's a better accent than a French accent. It's much sexier, I think.
That's funny. That's funny because my husband obviously Gary's from America. He's from Los Angeles. And he thinks I have an Irish accent, but then all the people in Ireland think I have an American accent. So I think it's been watered down a lot. But yes, if I'm back home in Ireland and I'm talking to everybody, it does soften up again. Or if you want to find out what it really sounds like, is if I get all head up or in a tizzy about something. Apparently it comes out then, Gary always says. And he always picks up on the word but, B-U-T. And I always, because we use a soft T in the Gaelic language. and like butter rather than butter, that kind of thing. So he always, every time I say but, he goes, "Oh, I love the way you say but." And I can see him smiling and laughing half the time. I said, "I'm not doing it on purpose. That's just the way I speak."
Oh, I know. It's so wonderful. And of course, all of this theater background is so wonderful. You write about in the book about it and being in the theater. There's nothing, it's so exciting to be in the theater. Even a little
Mm,
theater. I telling everybody out there, if you have a little theater in your town, volunteer just to be
yeah.
backstage. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if it's just a kids production. When you are backstage, it's amazing. People really don't understand how exciting it is. Something happens to people backstage. You're all working together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got some kind of magical energy to it, doesn't it?
It does. So, thinking about all of this, if we have a story to tell about you, if a cinematic story, I guess maybe we have to start, maybe we should start with Sark Island.
Ah, yes, Sark. This island here is off the coast of France. It's actually part of the UK Channel Islands, and it's about 3.5 miles long by a mile and a half wide, and it rises 300 feet up out of the water there. Absolutely idyllic place. It's the first dark sky island in the world. In fact, Enya has an album called after it called Dark Sky Island, but it's no roads, paved roads anyway, and no airports, so it's accessible only by ferry. And I was living on it for 5 years managing a hotel. Absolutely loved it.
And of course, here it is. This is the hotel. I think I have it.
Yes, that was the Aval de Creux Hotel. That was the hotel that I was managing. And then at the end of 2014, the owners decided that they were not going to open it for 2015. And that's what prompted me to go off and start traveling for a year as a volunteer. So that's how all that came about.
It is a beautiful place. Now, I had never been there. In Michigan, we have an island, Mackinac Island, where it's just bikes. It's just a horse. Oh, it's just so wonderful.
Mm.
It's so good to be away from everything.
I did actually visit Mackinac. It's absolutely gorgeous. Same kind of feel.
It is. It's exactly. And it's so wonderful. And they have the best fudge in the world there. But so there you are, unemployed, and you have something to do. Now, where's this?
That's La Coupe, and that is on the original picture. It looks like Sark is divided into two, and this little isthmus is joins Little Sark to Big Sark. And originally, there was no. It wasn't until the prisoners of war, actually, because it was occupied during the Second World War, that kind of stone path or cement path really was made. Because originally, that was just another dirt like stretch or a path, if you like. And the children on Little Sark on a windy day, because you can see how high up it rises from the seafloor, on windy days, the kids apparently had to crawl on their hands and knees crossing over to get to the school in the big island, a big side of the island, right? Which was scary, dangerous. But now that's a cement and it's called La Coupe, and it joins the two parts of the island together. And now they actually can bring tractors across it when they're bringing supplies, and then the horse and carriages.
You mentioned occupied, so many people might not know that the Channel Islands, there was Guernsey and Jersey.
Hmm.
Of course, this is a smaller island. I never got to it. We had a Jersey registered company. Jersey
Mm.
is the equivalent to Delaware in the
Yes.
States. Place you want to register a company if you don't want to pay a lot of taxes. So we visited Jersey quite often, at least once a year, because we had to do our reporting. So the fact that it was occupied and
Mm.
you can still see the caves where all of the supplies were kept, where the Germans were hiding, where people
Mhm.
don't realize how the Germans were really moving closer and closer to England.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Next stop, England.
Yep, next up, England, exactly. That's something for people to consider. Now, very few people, of course, go to when they go to Europe, they're ever going to go to Jersey or Sark or any of these. But that's a shame. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what's wonderful about you. You said I have to do something. I'm going to do something. I don't know what the heck. You've got a lot of ideas. It was a little bit scary, probably.
Yeah, it was. I had been on a volunteer project down in Fiji prior to that. And I had come back into Los Angeles, and I was driving on the freeway one day in Los Angeles. And the contrast between people in Fiji who, to me, were like intrinsically happy and they were earning a fraction of the money that people in LA were earning. And I would see these people driving cars beside me, and they were like in $80,000, $90,000 cars. and they just looked grumpy. And they were like trying to cut you off to try and get one car ahead. I remember in the car one day saying, "Oh, get me on an island without cars." And I went home and I Googled it. And that's how I ended up finding the Channel Islands in the UK. And also, there's another island down in Greece called Hydra, although I think they call it Hydra, which also didn't have cars. But at that stage, I thought I'd love to go to Greece because it's lovely and warm, because I love following the sun. But there was a lot of unemployment at that point in Greece, and I thought that's probably not a good idea. So that's why I ended up going to the Channel Islands instead, and ended up on Sark.
I was like you too. I traveled a lot. When I look back on it now, I was very young and I did all of this. And you're like a little bit older at the time, but you just grabbed life and said, I'm going to do things. So I have some of the photos of places you've been and things you've done. So let's just pop through them. You can tell us about your different adventures and what you did there. And we'll start with one really, it shows somebody who's taking on life and really going to do something strange. So a little bit of
Yeah.
skydiving.
Little bit of skydiving. There's a book by Eckhart Tolle called A New Earth. I remember in chapter 3, he's talking about living in the now, like just staying really present. This was actually taken in Texas, believe it or not. This opportunity came up to skydive in a tandem. I had done some static line parachute jumps in Ireland way back in the day, but I'd never done this like massive free fall. So one of the things I tried to do was to experiment with living in the now and try and keep that fear at bay. So when we got there and I got into the hangar and they said, okay, put on this green jumpsuit, that's the kind of time where you start getting really nervous about, oh, what's this going to be like? Am I going to die? Am I going to get injured? But then I started to say, okay, stay in the moment. What are you doing right this second you're putting on a green jumpsuit? How difficult is that? There's no danger to you. You've put on clothes before in your life. In fact, you do it every day. So that's not a problem. And then the next step was we were walking out on the tarmac. In lots of little airports, you walk on the tarmac to get to the plane. Done that before. No danger here. Climb on the plane. I've done that loads of times. The only slight difference is this one doesn't have a door, right? And then it came time to jump out of the plane. And of course, I was strapped to an instructor and I thought, okay, it's going to be fine. And then even that shot there, you get about 40 seconds free falling through the sky. And apart from looking like Miss Piggy because of the rush of air coming up from the speed at which you're falling, there was nothing to bump into. So that was pretty safe. And so really the only moment of any concern is the moment that you reconnect with land, because that's where things could go wrong and you could hurt yourself or kill yourself. But so I managed to keep that going. And that was one of the reasons I really wanted to test that theory. Can you live in the now? Can you stay focused? And that was one great experiment to do it. No, I don't have to do it again. Thank you very much.
Once is enough. Once is enough.
Yeah, that's it. I've been there, done that.
That's what's fascinating about the book, all your stories. I'm not going in the order of how everything happened. So
Sure.
some things might have happened before or after, but I thought the things that people might be interested in. And so for people, one day you're in Texas and the next, what is
Oh,
this one?
yeah. That was amazing. So I had this dream, and on the top of the bucket list was to go to see the aurora borealis in the Northern Lights. And I had learned that Abisko in the north part of Sweden was deemed the best place to see the Northern Lights by Lonely Planet because of the particular rain shadow it's in with the mountains and everything else. Here's the thing, you can't always guarantee something's going to happen in nature. So I thought I've got to make this trip about something other than just the sky and whether the lights are going to show or not. And so what I did was I enrolled in this photography course with Peter Rosen from Lapland Media. And it was to teach us how to photograph the aurora, but also to photograph in the blue light. At this shot here, the sun wasn't coming up hardly. And part of it we had to do was to do a reindeer sled. And each person there is for real on the sled, like on the two little bars. So there's no trainer wheels or anything. And that's a very idyllic shot there. We're just slowly going through to the forest part. But once you get into the forest, it was really narrow. And so you really had to keep focused and not go off the rails, literally. But it was so moving. And again, it was one of those things, if I hadn't have made that effort to do something other than just go see the Northern Lights, I never would have experienced that. And that to me will always stay with me. Amazing, even though it was cold.
That's what I always tell people. If you want to do adventures, that idea of just taking a trip and going someplace for 7 days or 8 days, that's not enough. It's do something. Go on an expedition, go on a something like this where you're learning how to take photographs, or go on an archaeological dig. Go somewhere where there's a purpose, and then that's also the way you get to meet people and really get it, because people don't relate to you if you're just a tourist. They
No.
don't want anything to do with you most of the time. They really
Yeah.
don't. But the minute you're doing something in their country, the minute you're taking a cooking class in France, or you're doing an archaeological dig in Israel, or whatever, you're doing something, then everybody wants to help you. Everybody wants to do something with you. And this is what I'm telling people always when I say, take a chance. Because when you do something like that, you take a class, you do some activity, take a job. You could be a dishwasher in Rome, and you would get to know real Italian people who really are interested in you. Next thing, I've been to countries where I've just mostly, for me, it was often doing research, sometimes doing assignments for some group or something. But when I'm there, I become part of the community.
Yeah.
And that's important. And I just wish people would be a little bit more, and maybe you will inspire them, because people are spending too much time on their devices, too much time watching television. And you have the big screen TVs, and people say, oh, it takes you there. It doesn't take you there. Because what really takes you to a place are people.
Absolutely. And like you said, living in the community, it gives you a totally different understanding. And that's one of the reasons that I do most of my travel as a volunteer. So I volunteer in the community. A lot of times I'm living with a family. It's just a different aspect, because traveling as a tourist, you get to see this kind of glossy postcard image, if you like, if you're sitting in a resort and you don't go outside the resort and you don't see, actually, it's a whole different ball game in some of the countries. And I love that. I love getting to really feel, and that opens you up. That expands your mind as well. Lots of stuff to share when you come home.
It does. And I think here, this is one of the examples.
So, that was me volunteering. That was actually in the nutmeg factory that was in Grenada. Yeah, that was a fun time. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun to work in a nutmeg factory. I just bought a fresh jar of nutmeg because Thanksgiving is coming up, and I'm going to be doing a lot of baking. And I always like the whole nutmeg. I like to grate it myself. I don't want those ones in the bottle. I don't know what they have in there. Half the time I think they're just shavings off the floor of some sod. Because it is not nutmeg. Believe me, it is not. For a baker, it is not nutmeg. If you want to have nutmeg taste, you have to grate it yourself. You need those little, they're so tiny. Aren't they wonderful?
I know. Yeah. And that was a grading system they had there, the little holes, so you were running them through to see if they were the right size.
That's right. Because they do grade them. Isn't it fun? And again, that's a discovery. I worked in a plastic bottle factory.
Oh, did you?
That is so much fun. I didn't know plastic, and it's hard. If you've ever seen I Love Lucy and Ethel in the chocolate factory, well, that's how it is in a plastic bottle factory.
Okay.
Because they don't come out perfect. You have to take those little bits of plastic off of them. And they can adjust the speed of the machine. And because, of course, I'm a very efficient kind of person, I was doing very well. I was like, I could do that. A bottle will come out, but I could do it. And and I must say, the guys in the factory thought it was great to have an American girl who's working in a plastic bottle factory. Why? I just needed some money. And I was more efficient than their people. Believe me. Anybody in their country was not doing it. So I'm efficient. I like, boom. And so they made the machine go faster and then faster. And they would test me. By the end of the evening shift, because it was wonderful, it was at night shift. In a place where they had no AC. But the doors are open. So you get, at night, you get the breeze and stuff. And the factory's going, and it's very noisy. And those bottles are coming out, and the guys would be testing me. And by the end of my shift, the bottles would be really coming out faster and faster. But boy, it was fun. And everybody knew within the first few days, everybody knew I was a girl who could do them the fastest. So this is a way to do it. This is a way to make life interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story.
There you are, doing nutmegs. I'm going to be thinking about you at Thanksgiving, because I'm going to be making lots of pumpkin, lots of different desserts, and nutmeg is right there at the top. So, So that's one of the fun things. And tell us about this.
This is down in Vanuatu in South Pacific, and I went down there to work on a turtle conservation program for where the nesting beaches were, where the turtles were coming ashore and nesting. And then we were there for the hatching, actually. So it was just coming to the end of the nesting season, and so the baby turtles were starting to hatch. I got to see one, oh my goodness, in the daytime, just bubbling up, and all these little turtles running out towards the sea. Part of that project was to be adopted by a local family. So this is my family. The lady in the blue dress is Mama Cecilia. So that was my mama. And then I had this baby sister, Fabiana. And there's another lady from the village as well. And I was a month with them. And that really opened my eyes. That was an amazing trip and really learned so much. One of the things was one day Mama Cecilia was making bread, and it reminded my mother, and she would make bread as well. And I would sit up on the counter when she was making her bread. And the difference here was Mama Cecilia was making the bread, but it was like on one of these outdoor lean-to kind of bench things that was like full of splinters and everything else. And she just put her bare hands down on the flour down. But at the same time, like she's shooing chickens off the table. And then she brought me to inside this little hut, and she just rearranged these hot coals. So she had a fire burning inside this hut, and you could see there was cracks in the different pieces of wood where the sunlight beams were coming through, and so you could see all the smoke in the sunlight beams. And so I have such a visual memory of that. And then she puts the bread down on this kind of pan, and then she picks up the hot coals and puts that down on top with her hands. And I'm like, holy smack. And no need to worry about, oh, you put it on gas mark 6 or 20 minutes at 350, or no, she just was, when it was done, she took them out, bread was made, and there was our dinner.
And how did it taste?
Oh, it was really amazing. It was like
Isn't
literally
it
hot,
amazing?
hot warm. Yeah, yeah.
I know. I've been in places like that where they're making the bread the same way. Maybe they have a oven, but it's also maybe the oven where they sleep in at night.
Absolutely.
The food is so good when you're at some place and all the women are sitting on the floor. They're making the rice. They're making the things, and animals are going around, and kids are going around. My goodness, you think, what would they do if they had inspectors?
Oh, I know. I know. And the funny thing I used to think about this is there was no like bleach or any of that kind of stuff going on, no chemicals that we use now for sanitation. And yet none of them ever seem to get sick. It's interesting. They must just have the constitution compared to, we're not all of us, but some of us are germophobic now to the point where you wouldn't eat it until it was absolutely spick and span, whereas they're just making it out there in the open.
Some of the best bread I had was made just out in the open. That's exactly the fun. So where's this?
This is an island called Namuka, and that is in the Kingdom of Tonga. And the island chain runs about, well, by ferry, it's from north to south, takes 24 hours by ferry. And this island here was about 6 hours by ferry north of the main island of Tongatapu. And I came here to volunteer for an Australian family who were living in Tonga on a sailboat, which was a catamaran. They ran their business, which was swim with the whales and photograph the whales. And the whales would come up from Antarctica in the winter months, which was like our summer months north on the northern hemisphere. And they had 2 teenage children, and my volunteer job was to help them get their assignments into their school in Australia. And so I said, I'm not a teacher. I'm not qualified. I've got certificates in teaching English as foreign language, that kind of thing. So I know how to teach, but I'm not actually an official teacher. And that was all great. But by the time I got there, they had decided to try and build some kind of a property here on this part of the island. And it's just a desert. It's absolutely gorgeous. But the problem, there was only 400 people or 432 people living on the island, just one tiny village. And there was no internet available. So when I got there, I said, how's that going to work with the thing with enrolled in distance learning with Australia? And they said, guess what? Welcome to homeschooling. And I was like, oh my goodness. And some of the things I could do, like English and various things like that, math, absolute nemesis for me. I'm just not good at it. But one of the other subjects that they wanted me to teach was the language of Tongan, the Tongan language. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I don't know anything in Tongan. And the kids had some flashcards that had torn off vegetable boxes. And over the years, they had been in Tonga for about 7 years. So the kids had picked up words here and there. but we didn't have any books or anything like that. So I went across that little part of the forest, if you like, hiked over towards the village, and I talked to the school teacher there, and there was these like school classrooms, if you like, all around in a circle around this green clearing. And there was young children all the way up to what we would consider the high school equivalent. And I said to him, "Are the older girls learning English?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Would you like me to give you some help with teaching English to them? And are the young ones learning their tongue and language? And did they have books?" So what we did was I did a swap where I said, "Okay, I can teach the older girls or help you with class there if you could lend me some of the children's books for learning tongue." And so that's how we learned it. And then a little bit later on, we ended up going up to American Samoa by catamaran, and we ended up getting some CDs and some books shipped in there for the language learning. But it was the most amazing experience ever. And this family were living 100% off the grid. And the kids were, they could, they weren't learning about sustainability, they were living it. The kids could fish, they could spearfish from snorkeling, amazing. And then their mom, Tris, is a beautiful photographer, and she did all the underwater photography of the whales. Absolutely stunning stuff. Amazing. There we are. There's one of Tris's photographs there, and that's Dior there as well. That's a baby calf on top and a mama, I believe, of the humpback whales that had come up. And yeah, that's from Whale Discoveries. That's one of her photographs. Extraordinary.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The water there is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. And speaking of beautiful water, we have some really beautiful water here.
There we are. That's the sailboat that I came to crew on, and that's just coming into St. Lucia. That's the pitons you're seeing right there. Beautiful, like a deep blue, royal blue water.
Oh,
And
it's
so, yeah,
wonderful. And
isn't it? And
just beyond there, just a little to the sort of left of the screen, that's where I almost drowned
no.
in St. Lucia. It's a long and funny story because
Okay.
I had a broken leg. I had broken a leg
Oh.
in Italy, and from Italy, going to recuperate in St. Lucia with a cast,
Mm.
and went on a sailboat. And then from there, let's just say it's an interesting story, but too long to tell you. But I love the place, and it was wonderful. And of course, the water is. I love St. Lucia. Of all the islands, I always liked St. Lucia the best. I just
Yeah.
something about it that I like an island where there's some mountains and some variety of things. And the people we had a wonderful time in St. Lucia.
Yes. And lovely people.
And so, at which point is this? Are you married at this point, or this is prior to marriage?
This is prior to, because we were making our way south down the Caribbean chain. And it wasn't until we got down to St. Vincent and the Grenadines in 2019 that he popped the question. Yeah, so this was beforehand. This was me just being happy one day. Beautiful. It was a lovely sailing day. We were actually flying 3 sails at the time, and we were just coming in, and I was getting ready we were about ready to drop the main. So I was out on deck to do that. And I was just like, yay, it's so amazing.
It is, and you look happy there, and your book is fantastic. It's so much fun to
Thank you.
read. You have so many wonderful stories in there, and it really is a voyage around the mind, around the world, and around the heart. You've done a wonderful, as Liam Neeson says, you really do visualize everything. You write so well. Your writing is so good. And you take us to all these fantastic, and many more. I could do this for another hour of all the locations you went to, but people really have to get this book. And I don't have to be the only one to tell you. This is, as Liam Neeson said, a must read for anyone seeking inspiration and a deeper connection to the world. And he's right. If he tells you something, listen, you got to listen to Liam Neeson. You can't ignore this guy, right?
Yeah, there you go. And that picture there is back in Sweden on the top of the mountain for the Aurora Borealis. Amazing experience.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to end with
Mhm.
this one because it is a marvelous photo. And the Aurora Borealis is a wonderful thing to see. Of course, we see it in northern Michigan, but not quite as magnificent as it is in Sweden and Finland. But a wonderful thing. Again, I think with this book and with also Flares Up, you capture the moments. You take the reader to these locations, and you're just a fine writer. So
Oh, thank you so much.
Following Sunshine. It's a great title, just a great story that you've told here. And of course, your website is The Writer on the Water, and you have a lot of information there. Tell people what they can find if they go there.
We've got lots of videos, and we've got lots of chats and podcasts, and also articles that I've written and print interviews. And also when it keeps you up to date with what's coming out next in terms of publications. We just like to share everything. And Gary and I now, we love this. We're actually both speakers on celebrity cruise ships. So we're heading out in November for another cruise, transatlantic one, and we'll be sharing some of our stories on that.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. That's the way to keep it going, having a wonderful, wow. I think that's fantastic.
The best part of us being speakers on the cruise ships now is another captain who has to worry about the weather. There's somebody else in the galley who's taking care of the meals. We just have to show up and do our presentations, and we don't have to worry about the weather or the elements. That was part of living on a sailboat, can be a little bit consuming, let's say.
Now that you found the joy of writing, I suppose at some point you're going to write another book?
Yeah, I have another book coming out that I've curated, which is coming out in May of next year, of 2025. And that is, I had started a writers group, a group of international writers back in 2020. I really want to make sure everybody got published traditionally. Back in 2023, we all met in real life in England. Like there's two people in Australia. There was somebody originally in Japan. So America, Ireland, England. And the 9 of us got together and we came up with this idea of writing an anthology of all of our short stories around one central theme, which, believe it or not, is based on a location theme. Curated that, and that's coming out next May. And then,
well, so then you will be back here on Joy on Paper Live, and maybe you will bring some of your colleagues with you.
Yes, that would be lovely. Yeah, I'm sure they would really enjoy that. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely. We'll have fun talking to everybody. And thank you so much for being a guest again on Joy on Paper Live. It's always a joy to talk to you. And I want to end our talk today with this photo again, because I think it is so beautiful. It is inspiring. And you and Gary are just, this photo, everybody should just look at it and say, you can do anything in life if you try. I think it's just beautiful. Niamh, it's just, I hope people will look at this and say, I gotta get out there. I gotta do things. So it's Niamh McAnally. The name of the book is Following Sunshine, A Voyage Around the Mind, Around the World, and Around the Heart. And I forgot to mention, what award did you win? I forgot to mention.
The Literary Titan Award is for Following Sunshine. And then we were shortlisted for Flares Up with the Sunday Times in the UK for the Vicky Orvis Award. So yeah, so we got a Literary Titan Award for Following Sunshine, which we're very pleased with.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for being on Joy on Paper. You are a joy, and I'm going to see you back in May, okay?
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, PatZi. Lovely to catch up with you again.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye now. Bye.
Bye.
Turn the house